Good morning. Have you ever been someplace and witnessed something and weren't quite sure what to do? Maybe you were the person doing it and someone brought it to your attention later and you weren't quite sure how to respond. A few years ago, I was volunteering at a Christmas program and things were going great. We were handing out cocoa and Christmas presents and handing out food boxes for them to have dinner later. I was handing out bread and overheard a guest asking a volunteer for an extra box of food. And the woman helping her said, "No, I'm sorry, only one box of food for family." The woman was really sad and asked if she was sure they wouldn't have any extras that they could spare for her and her family. Now, I knew that they usually did have extra at the end of the night, but I didn't say anything. I mean, it wasn't my program. I was just a guest myself, after all. I do help out every so often, but this wasn't my church, and really, who am I to these people? What if they do run out and someone goes without because they'd given out extra boxes earlier in the evening? I just kept handing out bread and greeting guests and smiling, and the woman just kind of walked away. Now, after she walked away, I overheard the woman who denied her the box say, "What does she think this is, a grocery store? You get what you get." Now, before we judge this woman too harshly, maybe we've thought the same thing, or overheard someone ourselves saying something similar, or read comments like that on Facebook or in the comment section of an article we've read. Maybe we didn't say anything either at the time. It's not really an uncommon sentiment, after all, in our society, to be honest. All too often we find ourselves judging others through our own experiences instead of taking the time to get to know them or their circumstances or their story. She judged the woman eating the extra box, and to be honest, at the time, I judged her unwillingness to help. As the night came to a close, there were extra boxes of food left over, and I thought about that woman who didn't get the extra food that she needed. What would have happened if I had spoken up? Why didn't I take the time to listen to her? Would it have made a difference? I also thought about the woman who made the disheartening comment, and wish I'd said something to her as well. Overall, that day I learned to say something in the future, because that was probably what I was being called to do in that moment. In today's gospel, we find Jesus paying attention to a sick man in the synagogue that people weren't really paying much attention to until he arrived. The man was possessed with unclean spirits, after all. The important thing here is Jesus saying the spirits' names and naming those unclean spirits. By doing so, Jesus is claiming authority in that conversation and over those unclean spirits. In Jesus' time, the person who speaks one name has authority in the conversation. Kind of an old world version of name it and claim it. This gospel is asking us to not look away and to speak the names of those unclean spirits we have in our society today. Things like racism and homophobia, sexism, xenophobia, all those things that keep us from truly seeing each other and God. Not only must we name these things, but we're also being asked to find the roots of these issues and actively work against them. This passage challenges us to find ourselves in it. What are the unclean spirits in our communities and our lives that we need to name? What could it mean for us to name those things and to find ways to see each other's suffering and to name the root of it? To truly listen to each other so that we can better name the things that might be harming our community. On Wednesday nights, a group of us have been gathering to discuss the healing power of a story. We've been working to listen deeply, share boldly, and try to understand how our stories help to heal the divides between us. As we begin to understand how we use our own stories to understand the stories of others, we begin to understand our own privilege. We start to see how to connect to our neighbor, and we find that which must be named, and then from there we can begin to heal. When I stayed silent during the Christmas program, I was giving into fear and not naming the issues set out in the interactions of that evening. If I had leaned into faith and that little voice inside me that was telling me to say something, change might have happened, a connection might have been made, and a need might have been met. Too often we stay silent when faced with difficult decisions to speak up and act. Naming those things which challenge our society only serves to bring them to light. Last Sunday, we heard from a wonderful children's book celebrating the light within each one of us. I wonder, how will we use that light to illuminate those things within our society that often find their way into the background, making sure that those needing comfort, welcome, and healing don't go unnoticed in our community? This week, may we each use the light within us to illuminate and name those things that would keep us from God and each other, doing what we can to help heal the world around us. Amen.